Alright, I'm not much of a writer, but I've been stuck for hours and I'm bored as hell. So here goes nothing. I'm part of a team that captures, but mostly kills, monsters. And when I say monsters, I mean legitimate monsters. Stuff like chupacabra, manticores, werewolves, and so on and so forth. We are not unique, not by any means. There are hundreds of teams dedicated to the same thing all over the world. And my team isn't necessarily the best one out there, but we're good and I trust my teammates with my life. All 4 of them. We've been on dozens of missions, and I used to think that we were prepared for anything. But now, one of my teammates is dead, and the rest of us are injured and stuck in the back of an armored truck with a 3-meter-tall Wendigo screeching outside. I'm going to be stuck here for the foreseeable future, and my teammates are all unconscious, so I have got nothing but time. I guess I'll start with how I got into this business, and how it works. It'll explain how I got into this mess. I was in the military, not going to say where, and I was good, extremely good. Incredibly gifted in terms of both physical and mental strength. Good with weapons too. I never thought it would really mean much. Where I come from, the military is conscription based, which basically means that if you're a man, you are mandated to drop everything and serve in the military for 2 years. If you don't go to the military, you go to jail instead. Fun. I figured I'd just serve my 2 years, finish, go to university, get a degree in mechanical engineering, and continue out the rest of my life. I thought all my military accomplishments would serve for nothing but just an interesting tidbit about me. But clearly, that wasn't the case. Just a few weeks before my 2 years were up, I was pulled into a room, which I never knew existed, and I was immediately met with some of the highest ranking officers I have seen in my life. Initially, I thought they found out about the empty shell casing I smuggled out from a live firing for a souvenir a couple months ago, and I was bracing myself for a court-martial and a trip to the detention barracks. Hey, I never said I was good at following rules, but that wasn't the case. They told me how impressed they were by my performance, and they were transferring me to a special team based in another country, one whose name I've never heard of, made up of elite soldiers from all over the world. I would go there and continue training for another 4 years, and I would actually be sent out on real military operations, and I wasn't allowed to say no either. Initially, I was pissed. I had dreams, aspirations, stuff I actually wanted to do. Not to mention I had just got a girlfriend, and we were still in the honeymoon phase. The idea of just dropping everything and being forced into military service again was maddening. That, and the whole real military operations thing. I mean, sure, I could hit 100% of the targets at the firing range, do 95 clean push-ups in a minute, and run for kilometers with a 15-kilogram bag strapped to me, but that doesn't necessarily mean I could fight terrorists or anything. I wanted to argue, make them change their mind, think I wasn't a good fit for it, maybe even tell them about the shell casing. But before I could voice my protest, they showed me the pay. Oh my god, the pay. So much money, and they promised it would only go up. Now, where I live, the cost of living is high, very high. Not to mention, I was a little money hungry at the time. I didn't want to become an engineer for the sense of accomplishment, if you get my meaning. So not only did I need the money, I wanted the money. I had a lot of stuff to pay for. I would have to get a house, a car, and a wedding ring for the girlfriend. Yes, I was planning on proposing. Oh, and also steroids. I take steroids. So, I went along with it. I got all my things together, hugged the parents, kissed the girlfriend, had one last drink with the boys, and went off to another country. Went to a base in the middle of nowhere, with a team made up of 20 people. The whole base for 20 people. I can still hear the Wendigo screaming. It's very distracting, just so you know. Back to the story, and then the training started. It was brutal, way worse than anything I've ever experienced, at least in the regular military. Safety is a concern, albeit not a huge one here. Safety was unheard of. The trainers, which is all I can call them, since there were no ranks on the base, pushed us as hard as humanly possible, and sometimes, inhumanely. Once, they gave us no food for a week. Another time, they snuck into our bunk and turned off the safeties on our guns. In our guns we had live rounds loaded. By the way, we were supposed to keep our guns loaded and with us at all times. We got screamed at for hours for that one. They said if we were real soldiers we wouldn't have let that happen. Many times I wanted to punch one of them right in the face. It's a literal miracle everyone made it to the end of training with their sanities and bodies intact. Maybe the steroids had something to do with that. I had to hide my use back in my home country, but here, they actively encouraged it. They even bought us needles and everything. Reason being was, according to them, if injecting yourself with a gram of testosterone every week makes you run faster, lift heavier, recover quicker, and just basically be a better soldier, then you should do it. At the end of training, we were briefed on our operations too. They told us we were going to see and do things we never would have imagined. They told us monsters were real. Initially, we all laughed, and then were punished for laughing. They made us run 5 kilometers, then continued the briefing. They told us we would be hunting monsters, but only those that were a threat to people, and we wouldn't always kill them. Sometimes just capture them, because some monsters, like minotaurs, produce certain substances that can cure disease. Meanwhile, peaceful creatures, like Sasquatch, would be left alone. All of this said with a straight face, I still thought it was all a big joke. I mean, who wouldn't, right? But then they showed us videos. I still remember them, frame for frame. Monsters eating people, tearing people apart, nightmare stuff. And not to mention the video quality. You can't fake stuff that well. They sent us on our first mission a week after, put us on a private jet and flew us off to Japan. Said we were looking for something called Gashidokuro, supposed to be a giant skeleton that eats people, which I mean, how do you keep the public unaware of something like that? A skeleton as big as a tree, just walking around, straight out of Clash Royale. What, so I clash a little, big deal. I've got to hand it to the cover-up guys. They don't get the credit they deserve. We found it eventually. 2 of them, actually. Wasn't hard to be honest. They were over 20 meters tall in the middle of a rice field. According to legend, these things were supposed to only attack lone travelers. The village they had just massacred said otherwise. They saw us, let out a bellow, and sprinted straight at us. We ran towards the nearby tree line, hoping the oak trees would impede the monsters. One guy wasn't so lucky. He was always the slowest during group runs. He got snatched up, and the skeleton just bit his head clean off. At least his death was instant. Thank God for that. Speaking of instant deaths, I can still hear that Wendigo shuffling around outside. Maybe I should speed up my writing a bit. We took down both of the monsters with rockets. Now, according to folklore, from hundreds of years ago, the Gashidokuro are supposed to be invincible. But they didn't have RPGs hundreds of years ago, did they? When all you've got is a spear against a skeleton 15 times your size, it's going to seem invincible. Props to people from ancient times. I don't know how they survived against these things, so that was my first encounter with the supernatural. We went on a lot more missions after that. Eventually, as we got better, we started getting split up into smaller teams. I started to actually enjoy it. I was only interested in money in the beginning, but a sense of accomplishment started coming with it. I remember the first time I really felt proud of what I did. We were in some town in Greece, with a really small population, less than 10,000. There was a manticore absolutely demolishing the place. It was tearing its way through a row of houses when we came across it, busting through a wall while a family on the other side was screaming for help. We took it down and went to check on the family. There was a little girl, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old, who ran up and hugged me. My heart melted a little. I'm not going to lie, I've always been fond of children. Her parents were probably scared of us, a bunch of guys with heavy weaponry and armor, but she wasn't. She just knew we saved her life, and she was thankful. I really thought about the impact of my job on that day, so I was making bank and loving my job. Life was far from perfect, but it was good. And then one day it came. the mission that screwed up my entire life. We were sent off to Canada. There was a confirmed Wendigo presence in a forest near a town, and people were starting to disappear. We had to take it down as soon as possible. Not a capture, a kill. Now, this Wendigo was particularly interesting. It used to be a human. That's pretty rare, apparently. Most Wendigos were made by a spirit in the sky or something, and the real ones are a lot stronger than the people who become Wendigos. This specific Wendigo used to be a guy named Ned Terrell. He went off into the forest with his girlfriend, ironically, to look for a Wendigo, and they got lost in a blizzard or something. Then a few weeks later he turned up and started eating people. A bunch of doctors just figured he lost it and they locked him up. They said he had convinced himself he was a Wendigo, and that it was best for everyone that he stay locked in his room for the rest of his life. He even wrote a letter pretending he was a Wendigo that got captured by humans. You can read it here, creepy stuff. But the thing is, Mr. Terrell wasn't so crazy after all. A couple months after they locked him up, the doctors noticed something. He was growing a lot. Now, Terrell was already a pretty big guy, about 2 meters if I remember his profile correctly. Then one day, one of the doctors, I think his name was Bowman, realized he was a lot taller. They measured him and he was 2.18 meters tall. A while after that, he was 2.34 meters. But even though he kept growing taller, he kept losing weight. Started at svelte 80 kilograms. He was pretty underweight after living in the forest and eating people for a couple months, and ended at 56 kilograms. And he kept getting stronger too. One day he leapt at the guards and took a chunk out of one guy's arm. Thank God for tranq darts. They hit him with enough stuff to take down an elephant. That was the day they decided they had to transfer him out to a more secure facility. They knew they were dealing with something they didn't have the ability to handle. So they threw him into a truck and transported him to a maximum security prison that was a couple hours away. At least that was the plan. Halfway there, he ate the driver. The guards busted out and ran off. Pretty soon, reports of a giant emaciated man running through the forest and roaring his head off reached us. We sent a scout who identified it as a Wendigo, and my team was sent in. Now, according to legend, humans can turn into Wendigos when they choose to resort to cannibalism instead of starving, or they can be possessed and forced to commit cannibalism by Wendigos. Which one is Terrell? Personally, I'm hoping he's the second option. At least that way, he dies with his humanity intact. The sounds outside have died down a little. Mr. Terrell must have gotten bored. I can relax a bit. We went out into the forest, the 5 of us. Body armor, assault rifles, grenades, rockets, all of it. We thought we could take him. We could not. It started off so slowly. We found its tracks and started following them. There was a blizzard going on, which is apparently something Wendigos can do. There's a blizzard going on now actually, but my team had no problems. We followed them in our armored truck for an hour or so. Then all of a sudden, it was just on top of us. Never saw where it came from. Unbelievable speed. It tore my teammate out of the driver's seat and swallowed him whole. He was a big dude too, 1.9 meters tall and built like a young Brock Lesnar. Just got swallowed up, starting from the feet. He screamed the whole time too. I'll never forget it. The Wendigo just unhinged its jaws and leapt on him. One movement, he was suddenly swallowed up to his waist. The truck crashed and the rest of us jumped out and ran for cover. I'll admit it, even professionals get scared. We just watched our teammate get eaten. Took a while, too. He was screaming and begging, one arm pinned to his side, and the other flailing around. He had broken the number 1 rule. Always have your gun loaded and with you, so there was nothing he could do. It took us a few seconds, but we opened fire. The Wendigo was squatting on top of the truck, its jaws now around the guy's chest. We killed our teammate, but he was dead anyway. We just granted him mercy. We emptied our mags at that thing, and we only hit it twice. Visuals was poor due to the blizzard, and like I said, it was fast. Seriously, faster than anything I've ever seen. It stood up, and it was huge. Absolutely dwarfed us. It was thin as a rake too, ribs nearly tearing through its skin. skeletal arms, kneecaps very visible. I saw a photo of a family of Indian villagers during the Madras famine once. It looked just like them, very human looking. Just looking at its face, you would think it was just a starving man. I saw a picture of Mr. Terrell, back when he was a regular guy. You could definitely tell it was him. It tipped the truck over and sprinted straight for us, lashed out, tearing through our armor like it was cardboard. One of us, I don't even remember who, got a grenade off. Unfortunately, not a direct impact, but still made it back off for a while at least. We jumped straight into the back of the truck and put it into lockdown mode. If you're slow and can't figure out what lockdown mode does, it locks the truck down. Metal covers sliding over the windows. A bunch of electronic locks. Makes it a fortress. Unfortunately, it also prevents it from driving, because the wheels withdraw into the body. The Wendigo started slamming on the doors, but it couldn't get in. It's strong, but not that strong. So that brings us back to where we started. I sent a distress signal out a while ago, but I got no response. The blizzard may be blocking our communications. The snow's coming down really hard. It's freezing, even with the truck's heater. I'm really hungry for some reason too. I couldn't have been here for more than a couple hours, but I'm absolutely starving. Even the time I didn't get food for a week at base wasn't this bad. I'm ravenous, but there's no food, and I sure as hell am not going out there. I won't make it very far. My teammates are still out for the count. I don't really know what to do now. I can't hear the Wendigo, but as long as the blizzard's here, I know it's out there. There's a video feed of the outside, but I turned it off. I need to conserve energy. The last I saw the Wendigo, it was eating the snow my teammates' blood spilled on. This thing leaves no traces. It would probably lick blood off the walls if it could. It can't get in, but I can't go out. The situation seems pretty hopeless. But hey, if you're reading this, that means I made it out. I'm typing on the notes app on my phone, so the only way for someone to see this is if I get out of here. I'm going to take a little break and think about what to do now. Goodbye. Hey guys, I found this story on a phone in the back of a wrecked truck I came across while hiking through the woods. I called the cops as soon as I saw it, but I snooped through it to find any valuables, and I found this. What do you guys think? It's probably just some BS, right? I mean, there aren't any bodies in the truck, or blood even, which, if this is real, should be the case. There was a really heavy blizzard a day ago, but that's just regular Canadian weather, right? Wendigos and monsters, they're made up, right? Maybe some aspiring writer crashed and decided to just type a story while he waited for help, then just left his phone and walked away. That doesn't make sense. And the truck was crazy. It was more of a tank than a truck. I don't think writers would really drive stuff like that. And there were a bunch of weapons too. I didn't touch them though. I'm wearing pretty thick gloves, but I can't risk getting any of my DNA on a firearm. I'm out on probation right now. There were prints leading away from the truck at least. Only one set though, and they were huge. I mean seriously, this guy was big. Barefoot too. I hope he made it out alright. I'm walking back to my house while typing this. I still don't know what to make of it. The only way it adds up is if the story is real. But it can't be, right? I mean, I would have seen something by now. Whatever, I already told the cops and they're on the way. They'll figure it out and I'll read about it in the paper tomorrow. I'm just going to focus on getting home now. It's starting to snow pretty heavily again, and the wind's picking up. I hope it's not a blizzard. Shout out to my superfans Sweet Black Swan and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.